The air in the galactic bazaar of Xylos. 7 was a thick soup of alien spices, the low hum of anti-gravity sleds, and the guttural barks of a dozen different species. Kaelen, a scrawny human boy of 12, wove through the forest of strange legs and tentacles with the practiced ease of a street rat. He was running an errand for old man Hemsworth, the cantankerous owner of a junk stall, his arms laden with a box of oddly shaped engine components. That's when he heard it, not the usual market cacophony, but a sharp, pain cry that was distinctly small. It was a sound of pure fear, cut short by a menacing growl. He rounded a corner stacked with crates of bioluminescent fungi and froze. In a grimy alley between 2 market stalls, a vril was cornered. She was a slender, fox-like creature with fur the color of spun silver and large, amethyst eyes wide with terror. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and she was trying to hobble backwards, her small, 3-finger hands held up in a futile gesture of defense. Looming over her was a gristlegraw. The beast was a nightmare of matted fur and raw muscle, a 6-legged canine from a high-gravity world. Saliva dripped from its 4-inch fangs, and its low, rumbling growl promised a swift and messy end. It was a status symbol for thugs and gangsters, bred for aggression and notoriously hard control. Its handler, a hulking brute from the outer rim, was laughing, making no move to call it off. Kaelen's heart hammered against his ribs. He was a kid, a nobody. The box of engine parts felt suddenly absurd in his hands. He should get a guard. He should run. But the vril girl's eyes met his. They weren't just afraid. They were pleading. They held a spark of intelligence, of a person about to be extinguished for sport. "Hey!" Kaelen yelled, his voice cracking. The brute and the gristlegraw both turned. The beast's attention shifted from the easy, wounded prey to the new, shouting one. It was all the distraction the vril needed to try and scramble further back, a whimper escaping her. The brute scowled. "Piss off, flesh sack." Kaelen's mind raced. He had no weapons. He had junk. His eyes fell on a specific component in the box, a high-tensile plasma conduit coil. It was heavy, solid. As the gristlegraw took a menacing step towards the vril again, Kaelen acted. He dropped the box with a clatter, hefted the coil like a baseball bat, and charged. "Leave her alone," he screamed. He swung the metal coil with all his might. It connected with the beast's snout with a sickening thwack. The gristlegraw recoiled, more in surprise than pain, shaking its massive head. The surprise lasted only a second. Then its eyes locked onto Kaelen with pure, undiluted hatred. It lunged. Kaelen tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The beast's jaws, capable of crushing durasteel, snapped shut on his left forearm. White-hot, blinding agony exploded through his entire body. He heard the crunch of bone a split second before his own scream. He was thrown to the grimy ground like a rag doll, his world narrowing to the searing pain and the hot, foul breath of the monster on top of him. He saw the brute finally step forward, yanking on a control device. The gristlegraw, reluctantly, released its grip and was pulled back, snarling. Through a haze of tears and pain, Kaelen saw the vril girl staring at him, her amethyst eyes wide with horror and something else, gratitude. Then the world began to swim, the sounds of the market fading into a dull roar. The last thing he felt was a cold, hard ground against his cheek. Kaelen awoke to the sterile white ceiling of the Xylos 7 med bay and a throbbing, fiery pain in his arm. It was heavily bandaged and immobilized. A droid hovered nearby, administering a painkiller that made the edges of his vision soft. Old man Hemsworth was there, his wrinkled face a mask of gruff concern. "Idiot boy," he muttered, but there was no heat in it. "Playing hero. You could have lost a whole arm. Or your life." To the vril, Kaelen croaked, his throat dry. "Alive. Thanks to you," a new voice said. It was deep, resonant, and carried an air of immense authority. Kaelen turned his head, a difficult task in his current state. Standing in the doorway was a vril, but unlike the small, fox-like girl, this one was tall and imposing. His silver fur was streaked with gray, and he wore intricate leather armor adorned with what looked like carved bones and polished stones. His amethyst eyes, ancient and intelligent, studied Kaelen with an intensity that was almost physical. This was Chieftain Raval of the Starfall clan. He moved to Kaelen's bedside, his movements fluid and silent. "The one you saved is my daughter Lyssa," Raval said, his voice low. "She is my only child, my heir." The gristlegraw's handler was a rival, seeking to weaken my line. Kaelen just stared, overwhelmed. A chieftain, an alien princess. It was too much to process. Raval's gaze fell upon Kaelen's bandaged arm. "My people," the chieftain continued, "have a code. A life for a life is a crude, simple transaction. But a life risked for a life, that is a debt of honor. It forges a bond. A tagrau, a soul debt. He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew a small, ornate dagger. For a terrifying second, Kaelen thought the alien was going to finish what the Gristlegraw started. But instead, Raval pricked his own thumb with the tip. A single drop of silver blood welled up. The healers say your arm will heal, Raval said, his eyes holding Kaelen's. But it will be weak. It will never be what it was. The bone was shattered. You will carry this mark of your courage for the rest of your life. A human life, so fleeting and fragile. He leaned closer, his presence filling the room. This is not acceptable to me. My debt will not be paid by letting you live a diminished life. Before Kaelen or Old Man Hemsworth could protest, Raval pressed his bleeding thumb against Kaelen's forehead, right between his eyes. The touch was cold, then impossibly hot. Your doctor's men flesh, Raval intoned, his voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. My people mend purpose. The world dissolved. Kaelen's vision went white. He felt a sensation like lightning coursing through his veins, focusing with searing intensity on his ruined arm. It wasn't healing. It was changing. He felt the shattered bones knitting together not just as they were, but reinforced, denser. The torn muscles rewove themselves with impossible strength. The nerves screamed as they were remapped, hypercharged. He saw visions, a silver plains under a binary sun, vril hunters moving with preternatural speed and grace, taking down prey 10 times their size with single, precise blow. He felt the wind, understood the hunt, the flow of battle, the way to channel one's entire life force into a single, decisive moment. It was agony. It was ecstasy. It was eternity compressed into a single second. When the light faded, Kaelen gasped, bolting upright in the bed. The pain in his arm was gone. Completely. He looked down and tore at the bandages with his good hand. The medics and Old Man Hemsworth stared in stunned silence. Where there should have been a mess of scar tissue and a withered limb, his arm was whole, but it was different. The skin was unblemished, but the muscle definition was more pronounced, almost sculpted, and coiling around his forearm, from wrist to elbow, were faint, silvery traceries, like intricate tribal tattoos that pulsed with a soft, internal light. When he flexed his fingers, he felt not just strength, but a potential for explosive power that was utterly alien. Raval stood back, looking weary but satisfied. The Tagral is sealed. Your body has accepted the gift of the hunt. Your arm is now stronger than any human bone, faster than any human nerve. It is a piece of my people's essence, given to you. He placed a hand on Kaelen's new arm. The touch was warm. But this is not a weapon, Kaelen of Earth. It is a responsibility. You have the heart of a protector. Now you have the arm of one. Use it well. With that, Chieftain Raval turned and left the med bay, his duty fulfilled. 6 months later, the same brute who had handled the Gristlegraw swaggered into Old Man Hemsworth's stall. He was there for protection money. Hemsworth, frail and defiant, stood his ground. I told you I don't pay thugs, the old man said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. The brute grinned, a nasty expression. Then you get a demonstration. He cracked his knuckles, the sound like rocks grinding together. Before he could take a step, a voice, now deeper and calmer, spoke from the shadows. I think you should leave. Kaelen stepped out. He was still lanky, but he carried himself with a new confidence. His left arm, bare to the elbow, showed the faint, silvery swirls. The brute laughed. The one-armed hero. Come to get the other one broken? He lunged, a massive fist heading for Kaelen's face. It was a blow that would have shattered concrete. To the brute's astonishment, Kaelen didn't dodge. His silver-traced left hand snapped up and caught the fist. The impact made a sound like a hammer on an anvil, but Kaelen's arm didn't even tremble. His fingers tightened. The brute's eyes widened in shock and in pain as he felt the bones in his hand creak under the impossible pressure. You were wrong, Kaelen said, his voice quiet but clear. You said, we were just flesh. Fragile. He applied a little more pressure, and the brute grunted in agony, sinking to his knees. But that's our secret, Kaelen continued, leaning down. Human flesh is fragile, but the spirit inside it, the will to stand up for someone who can't stand for themselves. He released the brute's hand with a slight shove. That can be unbreakable. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone gives that spirit an arm a match. The brute scrambled backwards, clutching his injured hand, and fled into the bustling market without a backward glance. Kaelen stood there, looking at his arm, the silver tracery glowing softly in the dim light. He wasn't just a boy who had been bitten. He was a living bridge, a promise kept, He was the boy who defended a wounded alien girl, and in return, an alien chief had given him the strength to defend an entire galaxy.